Take a look. You probably can guess that on day 1, these strawberries were bright red, fresh, kind of firm to the touch. And how many of you would eat them on day 1? Almost all of you, great. On day 10, we've got some mold growing. They're a little bit mushy. How many of you would eat them on day 10? Maybe. How about if I paid you? Yeah, okay, so some of you. Great, what about day 20? We've got a lot of mold growing, very mushy, juices present. How many of you would eat it at this point? Maybe, okay. Well, luckily I'm not going to actually eat them, but what I'm going to have you do is try to use all the following key words here. These are some of the words that kind of came up when you were looking at the different types of fungi earlier before break. Digestion, decomposing, nutrients, rotting. So I'd like you to try to use all those key words there to explain what do you think is happening over time in the Ziploc bag for the strawberry. Yes, Alex, great. Thank you.
Well, what's happening over time in the Ziploc bag is the strawberries are rotting and decomposing. What's causing this might be that the mold growing on it gathers the strawberries' nutrients through digestion, and the strawberry starts to shrivel up and break.
Great, so you said what's happening is rotting in, decomposing. Is that the same thing that you're talking about, you think? Or are they two different things that are going on? And this could be a question for anybody. Alex used it. I saw a lot of people using this. A lot of people said the strawberries were decomposing and rotting. Are those two different things that are happening? What do you guys think?
Yeah, I think it's two different things. When they rot, the mold and bugs and stuff starts to grow on them and keep the nutrients, but then when they decompose, and it's more of them falling apart, not.
But what's causing them to fall apart?
Well, the mold is just getting all the nutrients out of it, so they.
Okay. So it kind of sounds like you're saying the same thing. Are they the same thing?
Well, I think the decomposing is more the last stage where it just falls apart, and rotting is the first stage.
Okay. So any other ideas here? Corey?
The mold is, I think that rotting is the mold taking all the nutrients like up to the surface so the mold can, I guess, digest it. And decomposing is where the actual material of the strawberry starts to fall apart and become compost.
Because what reason?
Because the mold is, all the nutrients are out of the strawberry, so that's basically what makes up the fruit.
Great. So I'm hearing kind of a couple of things here. It sounds like you and James have really similar ideas here, where you're saying that mold is, or fungus, is the cause of both of those, rotting and decomposing, but they're two different parts of the same overall thing that you're saying. Great. Any other ideas about what's going on inside of it? Maybe we can add a couple of these ideas that you just talked about onto our concept map up here. I can find my remote. So you guys remember this back from the day? We put a lot of great ideas on here. Let's talk about what you guys just shared here. So we've got it here: decompose, take the goodness away, parts of the cycle, and add nutrients like compost. So we're talking about decomposing and rotting, maybe being two different processes. I'll add what you said: 2 stages caused by fungus. What I'm going to have you guys do is look up some of these words in the picture packets we have available here with the info, and see if you can get a better idea of some of the definitions of the words. Because when I walked around, a lot of people were like, "Miss Bauer, I'm not really sure what decomposing means." That's okay, because you're going to be looking at that.
There's something that the concerns that break down or materials.
What happened? For what?
Okay, so it's basically that breakdown. Mold or fungus releases
I want to see that realization kind of continue.
the nutrients.
Trying to do well. I want to see that improve. You were doing so well. So read journal tomorrow.
To what? To get the simple sugars?
Yeah, that breaks down the material, so only the simple sugars are left.
Okay.
So can you give me
Wait, I'm still behind.
Try to do it the same way that you want to do it.
It would like melt.
what does it do?
The chemical the fungi releases to break down the material so only the simple sugars are left.
Okay, slower.
The chemical the fungi releases
Okay.
to break down the material
Okay.
so only the simple sugars are left. I'm gonna look for starches.
Okay.
Well, look at it. It says. Look, I found sort of a definition for decomposing. Like break down organic material.
Where?
Break down organic material.
Deadly twigs and other material.
Yeah, so I'm gonna do
Organic
that.
material. Now,
So food
what
would be like
like trees,
anything
like
that
living
isn't
things.
man-made. Oh, and rocks. They can't
Okay,
be
I'm
rocks.
saying
Living things.
Yeah, basically.
Decomposing.
breaking down. Want me to eat anyway? Can you describe how do you digest food?
I really
Eat it.
You eat it, yeah. Can you describe that process for me?
I chew it,
Or anybody else, you can help. How do you
And you
digest food?
and
swallow.
then I swallow, and then
Okay.
it breaks it down.
What breaks it down?
Acids.
Yeah, acids
Okay.
in my stomach.
Okay, great.
also you
And then what? And then where does it go from
And
there?
it goes down.
Well, I mean, like you eat it and it breaks down, but I mean, why are you eating in the first place?
to give you energy.
To give you energy. So how are you getting that energy after you break it
You're
down?
taking nutrients from the food.
Okay. So then describe how fungus is doing that. Is that the same?
absorb it through their cell membrane.
So aren't we kind of doing that too? We've got lots of cells in our body and we're absorbing them, kind of all of our cells within our body doing that?
Well, they
So
first break it down with enzymes.
what was that?
Enzymes, they first break it down.
They first break it down, okay. So how is this process here? Is this process different from what we're doing?
Yes.
Why is it called
Almost.
extracellular? What does that mean?
More cells.
No idea. Why don't you guys take a look at a couple more of these here, just to compare what they're saying about the extracellular. What are they doing here? So you want to kind of compare maybe most of them here to see if there might be any differences, because some of them are really similar, but you might obtain more information by looking at one or two more.
I guess the first fruit, when it starts, the fruit starts like losing nutrients, that's when it's rotting. What? Like when the fruit starts releasing nutrients, like losing them, then that's rotting, and then the fungus. Oh, it doesn't say that.
It says that, like, I read two of the slime mold ones, and they grow on stuff that's already rotting, like without. So I'm trying to see.
So it's probably the first, the like the fruit slash whatever is losing the nutrients and the fruit or something.
Rotting is fruit. Rotting is fruit.
No, rotting is when they lose like nutrition.
I think that's what the mold's doing, not.
And then it just stuck on the
So we talked about extracellular digestion already, yeah?
Yep.
What is it?
It is.
Process where fungus breaks down food to simpler sugars and absorbs with cellular membrane.
No, it's
Cell
the
membrane.
way fungus digests foods, where enzymes break the organic material into sugars and take the sugar into cell membranes for energy.
Ah, interesting. Okay, so isn't that the same thing you're doing then? When you eat? Yeah? But how is that different though?
We don't use enzymes.
Do we? We actually do have enzymes inside of our body.
No, cell membranes.
We do have some. Yeah. Well, so you just described this process where fungus is releasing enzymes, they're breaking it down, and then they're absorbing it. How are we doing it?
We swallow it and chew.
So
We chew and
swallowing.
swallow it first.
We chew and swallow it first. So how are these two processes different?
This one goes like straight to the stuff.
So they have a stomach.
It's like my
Well,
dog
they
when he
break
eats, he
it
doesn't
down
chew.
first.
What?
They break it down first,
They break it down first before they.
like swallow.
So what would that look like if you wanted to, Lucy? I'm gonna tell you, eat like a fungus. Here's a strawberry. Eat like a fungus. What would you have to do?
I'd probably have to. I have no idea.
So you
I
have
probably-
enzymes inside of your stomach.
Yeah, I'd probably have to cut open my stomach and release the enzymes and then swallow.
Okay.
Absorb.
And then there's the strawberry. Then what do you do to the strawberry?
Then we go to the doctor's office.
Okay. Stay focused. Maybe somebody can help him out. Jake. Then what happens? So she released her enzyme. Now what?
And then the enzymes break down the organic material in the food.
Okay. And then what does Lucy have to do?
I'd have to absorb it.
Ah, isn't that kind of a graphic picture to think about? You have to expel something, it's getting broken down, and then you've got to like get it back into your body somehow. Yeah. Great. So I want you to make sure that you're adding that definition here, so that makes it a little more clear. It looks good. Great. So what do we got here? Can you kind of tell me some of the relationships that you saw?
Wait,
So start anywhere, and then you can go from there.
wait, nutrients to sugar because nutrients are broken down into sugars.
Great.
Enzymes to sugars because releasing the sugar is releasing enzymes or something.
Sugar is releasing
Or something was, I can't really remember.
You might want to maybe look through a couple more to help you refine that a little. What did you get? Did you have something different?
Well, for that one, I actually didn't write anything, but what happens is the enzymes are released and then it breaks down the sugars to become nutrients.
It breaks down sugars?
Yeah.
Are you sure?
It breaks down organic stuff into simpler sugars.
Oh, okay. So you're missing something there. So you might want to add that. Enzymes are breaking, so it's not breaking down sugar.
No, yeah.
Organic material into sugar. So what is organic material? What are we talking about?
Like leaves, twigs.
What about metal?
No, that's not organic because it's made by people.
Okay. What about like bread? People make bread.
That would be organic because it's made out of wood.
Okay. Alright. It's not organic. Great. So I want you to make sure that you're kind of double checking yourself here. You're saying, oh yes, I understand that enzymes are related to structures by this one. So I'll be back after you get that one done.
Well, I guess overall, so first of all, you were just thinking that now you're going to move into the yeast experiment.
Yeah, and I know we talked about that being kind of a capstone,
Mm-hmm.
but I'm just thinking like, instead of concentrating on ecosystems right now, it seemed like the kids know that, all mushrooms or fungi are decomposers, but they're not quite sure what's going on. Give them like a more concrete version of it, so that way they say, oh, this makes sense, we've got the yeast, there's water, there's sugar, it's doing something with the sugar, it's maybe digesting it. They can use some of those words too to come out. And then after they've got this idea of the breaking down and maybe even testing the different types of sugars the next day or the next 2 days, then we can talk more about, okay, well, we talked about what's going on, now let's talk about why is it doing it, why is it using sugar, what's the energy for, going into reproduction, and then talking about how, in the bigger scheme of things, how does all that stuff help it survive in an ecosystem, how's it affecting other things. So it seems like it makes more sense to flow in that direction, so I didn't know if that was okay.
Oh, yeah.
Because I know you guys are talking about it.
No, I think you're exactly right. That order seems to flow really well. I think and that's sort of where the kids are at right now too,
Yeah.
in terms of what they've latched on to. So it makes a lot of sense to switch that up, and then so you're sort of it's whether you give them bits and pieces now or a little bit later too, and then it's just sort of which pieces are you giving them. So we'll give them the ideas about reproduction later, and what might they use that energy for. I think we could still hint at that, just sort of, but not really go into the whole, like, here's all the different ways that yeast reproduce. And
Yeah.
this is why they need so much
You mean
energy
when
for
I
this.
teach it, or you mean when we're going through?
Well, when we're going through the yeast investigation, so as like before they start the investigation tomorrow, before you do the first one, you could just sort of say, what do you if they've gotten to the idea that yeast are using these sugars, you just what do you think they're using these sugars for?
Yeah, and I think it would be good to point out the stuff that's inside. When after they set it up, they're gonna notice that there's like foam and like a bunch of junk in there. I might put like a question like, well, what do you think? Why is it that there's more stuff in there? What do you think's happening in there? And then we can revisit that question too later.
Which moves sort of into the second model about, which really is getting into the cellular respiration model too.
Yeah.
Which, now you're not planning on really introducing that model until a little bit later, right? Not tomorrow.
You mean
The-
you showed me?
Yeah.
I have it here.
just the glucose plus
Oh, I have it.
oxygen
Yeah, that.
gives off the carbon dioxide.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, I think I'm gonna just talk about like that basic one that we talked about, like sugars, or food even, maybe food, and then how we're gonna be using that. Oh, and this is how I'm gonna have them observe this. I guess we haven't even created this yet. We're
Right.
not gonna create it yet until
Right,
after.
so that's sort of what I was asking. So then maybe they would do that the following day
Yeah.
after they've made some observations. Okay.
And I was even thinking, I don't know what you think, but maybe not even telling them how to set up the yeast experiment, just having them kind of play with it. Maybe say, like, here's yeast, maybe brainstorm, like, okay, what do all living things need? They'll say, like, water, food, and I'll have some of the supplies up, and then just have them set it up, and then observe it. What do you think? Or do you think I should have every single group set up the same experiment?
Well, I think before we jump into that, let's back up and sort of say, where do we think they're at right now? What little more information do we think that they need before they go into the experiment? And then maybe that will help us figure out
Okay.
how open to do that piece. And then, so you could do something like, when they're sharing their stories, you could on the document camera have some kids show the concept maps that they made today too.
Yeah, and I was thinking, just as you're saying that, is having them, because this one that we created in the class is kind of like an initial, where we just put down all of our ideas. The one they created today was like really solid and concrete.
Yeah.
And, have them use that as their concept map, and so as we go through like the yeast experiment, they can go back to that, maybe add things.
Well, some of them were writing on the back. You told them to write on the back side, and so you could have them skip the next page.
That's a good
So they
idea.
could have the whole double page.
Yeah.
So, and what do you think they're understanding after today? I noticed when you were going up to the small groups, you were really pressing on the difference between extracellular and intracellular digestion, and sort of what's the difference between how these fungi digest something and how a human might digest something. And so what do you think the kids are understanding about, do you think they've got that pretty much down, and how well are they understanding complex to simple sugars? What's your understanding about how they're...
Well, extracellular digestion, I think a lot of them were so confused, because that's such a big word, like extracellular, what is that? So that was kind of like one of my key, like pretty much the only key question that I try to make sure every group understood. And so when I asked them, well, what is that? They'd describe it to me, and then I'd say, well, can you give me like a second grade version of it? And they'd describe it to me, and it made sense to me, and it sounded like they understood it. But then when I'd ask them, like, how is that similar to what we do? They'd say, oh, I'm not really sure. Is that the same thing that we do, or is it different? And so what I try to hint to them and tell them, like, well, you have enzymes inside of your stomach. And so I made that analogy, like, why, or if I told you to eat like a fungi, if I give you a strawberry and told you to eat like a fungi, how would you show me how you can eat like a fungus? And so then a lot of kids were saying, oh, well, I would have to take the enzymes outside of my body,
put it up onto the fungus and then wait till it breaks it down, and then I'd absorb it somehow. So it seemed like a lot of groups really understood that, and a lot of them were like, oh, that's kind of gross sounding, and I think that really caught their attention.
So I would agree. I think they understand this sort of extracellular digestion, which you're right, is a big idea to grasp, but it's just the idea of complex to simple sugars that they're still struggling with. And so a couple things we were thinking about. One is maybe just something, well, I think maybe a diagram of some sort would help them understand this.
So you think I should have like a mushroom and then put a little question mark like it's on top of something, and then have these are the things that it can be on? Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, or just so that I just want to make sure that they are able. So rather than just showing them the brick wall,
Oh yeah. Okay. I
then we
see
have
what
some
you
way
mean.
to ground it, contextualize it.
Oh, and say here's the picture, and here's a close-up picture of maybe what it's made out of.
Exactly.
Okay, I see.
Exactly. Or I mean, you could even use some of their pictures from their picture packets.
Oh
too.
yeah. That's right.
But just so that they're thinking about the whole kingdom and have a way to contextualize this, because this you can't see.
Yeah. Exactly.
So and then that they have, these are all made up of simple sugars. It's just we call it starch or complex carbohydrate.
As a whole, yeah. Okay.
And then before they move into their experimental setup, you might want to pose a question like, so they're absorbing all these sugars, what do you think they're using them for?
A lot of them were saying, another thing I noticed too is a lot of students were kind of confusing nutrient and sugars. Like they would say, well, I don't think that they realize like sugar is a nutrient. A lot of them would say, oh, they are absorbing nutrients. And then in like a separate statement, they would say they're absorbing sugars. So I don't know if they put those two together. But then I heard some students right off the bat talking about, well, they're using it for energy, just like you would use eat candy bar for energy. So I might touch on that as well.
I think that's a good idea.
Yeah. But I didn't know if you think that might be better to have each group do the same experiment where I say, this is how much water you put in, this is how much yeast you put in, and then on the second or third day have them manipulate one of those variables. I think that might be better.
I think so too, because then they'll have a baseline understanding of what should happen, and then they can think about what they might vary and why they're varying it.
Okay. These are the 7 keywords that you looked at yesterday, and I asked you to draw some lines and explain some relationships between some of those words. So I would like to start off by kind of reviewing that. Can I have somebody maybe start us off here? Can you start off with any of those words and maybe tell me one of the relationships you saw between that and maybe another idea? I know everyone has relationships, so let's have more volunteers. Audrey.
Well, we could argue enzymes to starches because
Enzymes to starches, okay.
the enzymes actually break down the starches.
So enzymes, what are enzymes?
Oh, they're like the chemicals that the fungi releases to go break down into.
Yes. And as I'm going through it on here, if you want to add anything else to your journal that you don't have, you might want to do that too. So we've got, Audrey said it's released, so there's some kind of a chemical released by the fungi. And so Ian used the word decomposing and rotting kind of together. What's the relationship between those two words there? I'm going to have you guys talk to the person next to you, and I'm going to call on someone at random. So what's the relationship between decomposing and rotting?
I think that well, taking the
nutrients away, it starts rotting, and then when all the nutrients are gone, it decomposes. I don't know. That's just my
Not
best.
real.
It's my best guess. Yeah, but I want to get a client.
That's me. Let's get your attention back up here. I'm super. Do we have any other volunteers that would like to volunteer to tell us what this relationship is? Okay, well, let's do Carly. What do you guys think?
After it rots, it decomposes.
After it rots, it decomposes, maybe? Okay. Any other ideas out there? How about Alex?
Well, I'm kind of thinking the opposite of what Carly said. I think after it decomposes, it rots, because maybe rotting is when it has lost all of its nutrients.
And decomposing would be?
Decomposing is just when it's losing nutrients.
When you're losing it, like in the process of losing it? Okay, let's hear some evidence. See what happens. How do you know that's decomposing or rotting?
Look at it. What do you think it is?
I don't know. Well, you have to come up with a better definition. Is it the same thing or are they different?
I think decomposing is when it's starting to fall apart, and then rotting, it's just leading up to it decomposing.
Aren't you still seeing kind of the same thing happening, maybe?
Well, yeah, but when it's rotting, it's like still together, and then when it decomposes, it just...
Okay. Yeah, Amy.
I think it's the other way around. Decomposing is like the breaking down of, and rotting is falling apart.
I'm going to have you guys think about this. Decomposing, a lot of you guys are defining decomposing as things being broken down. And some of you said rotting is something that's broken down already too. So, in both of these processes here, what's breaking these things down? What's breaking the food or the trees or the plants down? Let's start out here. Fungi, okay, let's concentrate on the fungi part. And fungi is doing this how? You can kind of follow the relationship. Great, so we're doing this process here that we talked about. So this final stage, after it's gotten its nutrients, this whole kind of process is a description of like these decomposing. It's kind of describing the whole process of extracellular digestion. We're seeing things decompose. And it's really so much of rotting too. Things are being broken down. You guys, a lot of you were saying that you were losing nutrients here and you were losing nutrients here. So these processes, decomposing and rotting, are pretty much the same thing. If you're looking at this, it's hanging out in your fridge. That same process of enzymes breaking starches down into sugars is happening, isn't it? What do you guys think? Yeah? You kind of see it happening here? And so we're talking about decomposing and rotting being kind of similar things here. Decomposing or rotting. Yeah,
But when we said that it was losing nutrients when it was rotting and decomposing, I don't think it is really losing nutrients, because because some people, like when they're done with the food or something and they don't want the rest, they put it in the compost thing. And when it turns into compost, they use that for plants because it has good nutrients in the soil.
Okay.
So I don't think it loses nutrients.
But does it have the same amount of nutrients as it started off with? No, so then what's happening then? Losing nutrients. It'll probably have less nutrients. Yeah, but we're talking about the fungus is getting some of the nutrients from that food. Does that make sense?
Yeah.